I feel like there's just a spark missing from the way that you feel about your work. Not like that Valentine's Day spark. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just this like joy and excitement about the work that you're doing. And maybe it's something that you used to have in your role, and now it's just kind of gone. And you wonder what happened with that. Well, I want to talk to you about something that I think is really important in terms of some things that we can do to bring that spark back. And today we're going to dive into one of these hacks that I think could be very useful to you. Hi, I'm Jeanette, the Northtown Coach. I'm glad you're here with me today. So this continues a series that I have been doing on these different hacks that are maybe so simple that they're overlooked as things that we can do to make our work better, especially for us who are in the 50 plus, Gen Xer, maybe baby boomer generations, and we've had enough history behind us in our work to know what feels good and what doesn't feel as great anymore. And so if you're in the doesn't feel great anymore, I invite you to consider these hacks as I bring them to you. I'll put a link in the description box to the whole series because we're partway through the list of hacks, and there are some that we've already covered that might be useful too if you're just joining in. But this one is, again, one of those ones that has that academic sounding name because all of this is based on research, academic research. So I'm not just pulling these out of the top of my head untested. These are things that actually work as hacks go. And so like the others, this one sounds a little bit more serious than it actually turns out to be. It's actually pretty straightforward when you think about it. So the academic title for this is Finding More Task Significance. So people who have more task significance in the roles are going to feel better about the work that they're doing. So this matters because how you feel about the work that you're doing really affects your, engagement with that work. It affects your motivation. And because we spend so much time in our work, this is a huge impact to not feel like that spark is there. So task significance, when we actually break it down into what it really is outside of the fancy name, it's about how much you can see your work impacting other people. So depending on the kind of role that you have, the people that you impact may be truly external to your organization, like the customers of the organization, or they may be internal customers. So other people that you support within your organization that are ultimately supporting different customers out there. Both of those scenarios have task significance with them. So you don't have to be in a direct customer-focused role to feel the impact of task significance. You just need to be able to trace the work that you're doing to how it has an impact on other people. So a good example of a place where it feels like it's harder to trace, but is actually there, is in a role like, let's say that you're in an internal role that focuses on payroll accounting for the organization. So you make sure that the people inside your organization get paid. Well, that's not the direct customer that you're affecting. That's an internal role. But if you can see how important the role is to the well-being of the people who do serve the customer, in other words, if they don't get paid in a timely way, in an accurate way, they're not going to be able to be in a position to ultimately serve the customer. You have a significant impact to these internal clients in the role. So it really doesn't matter that your role doesn't affect, ultimately the external part of the organization. You can have a supporting role and still see that impact all the way through. So if you are in a situation where that's starting to register as I talk about this, oh yeah, I'm not really seeing that impact the way that maybe I once did, that's a sign to you that this is a place where you might want to think about, okay, what else can be done about this? So this was a place for me as I was, ultimately, left my organization of 15 years that I was really grappling with. It wasn't obvious to me at first glance that this was a missing element. It just had happened so gradually in the way that I was promoted and my responsibilities that I started to get further and further away from being able to see my impact on other individuals. And it was now that I look back at it, in some very obvious ways, like I had a role in the mix of those 15 years that had quite a bit of coaching internally to it. So I had one-on-one interactions. I had quite a bit of facilitation. So I was leading groups of people. I was leading change management sorts of things. There was so much impact during that period of time. But as things progressed and the needs of the organization changed and I was promoted into other aspects of that same work, that direct ability to see my impact got harder and harder for me to see, because there wasn't a call within the organization for me to be doing the kind of work that had so much of that in there. And then I think, to make matters much more worse or dramatic for me, depending on how you see it, I'm not suggesting that the organization is wrong in what its needs are. But from my perspective, in what was or what is still really important to me in that task significance, it was starting to really dry up from a larger perspective because the organization was turning to some huge process work in support of a big IT project that ultimately is a good thing for the organization to do, and it does serve internally, but it's really hard for the individual employee at the organization to see how that directly benefits them. So I was seeing it on a micro, but also a macro basis. And so that helped me to see, now, I first tried to push back a little bit to see, like, okay, well, how could I tweak some things to get more of this back for me? Are there different things that I can do? And when all those sorts of, ideas around tweaking just didn't come to fruition, it wasn't something that was possible at that point, then I could see, this is I need to make a decision about where I'm going from this perspective, because this feeling of task significance, knowing that I can positively impact other people, is hugely important to me. And I'd argue it's really important to a lot of us out there. Like, I'm not alone in that perspective. And so when you lose track of this and when you lose that spark, it can be really, really painful. So what can you do about that? Well, like I did in my story, I think first you look for things that you might tweak in your organization. How can you make small changes to the way that your role is focused so that you get more of an opportunity to see how your work makes an impact on others, either within your organization or outside of your organization? So that's the first thing, is think about all the different, just small little things that you can change that could make all the world of difference. Now, if that doesn't look like it's really bringing you what you need in this category, then you can start to look outwards. Now, you don't have to be, doing the big jump like I did. I made the decision ultimately to leave, and then the bigger decision to start my own coaching, firm, coaching and consulting firm, which is what I'm doing now. That's a big, big move. You don't have to do things that are that big. A smaller step that you could take, if it's not looking like there's much change you can do within your current role, is to look for places that you can volunteer and places in your personal life where you can get more of that. So you might take one of your skills that you're utilizing in the current position and see how you might utilize that in a nonprofit that would gladly accept your help and your work in that area, that are looking for that sort of help, where you can see that impact really come about. Another thing that you might do is to think about a mentoring sort of a role. How can you help other people who are not as far along as you are in your career by, being a mentor, a coach, a help to them? That's a direct way where you can see that sort of impact. So there's lots of those kind of things that you can do that aren't necessarily at the core of your job. But first I'd start with the core of the job, then I'd start to look at these other things. And then if that doesn't feel like it's quite the way that you want to go, then, be like me. Look at some of the bigger things out there. Maybe it's a job change. Maybe it's something entirely different where you can get more of that. If you want some help in just strategically thinking through what that might look like for you, please check out the link in the description box, because I'm happy to offer, 45 minutes free, just time where we can brainstorm together. I'd be thrilled to do that with you. All right, so that's it for today's hack. I'd be very curious to know, what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't, what you think you might try. Just drop a note in comments. Let's have a conversation there. All right, until next time, thanks for watching today, and we will talk again soon. Take care.